You know, if you're planning on doing any casting, especially with a spinning outfit and using artificial lures, for both migratory rainbow trout, brown trout, lake trout, and salmon, it's a really good idea to use the right line and also the right connections in your line. For example, today I've been using the titanium braid in 20-pound test. And you can see that the braid is a green color when you load it onto your reel. So this is it right here. The reason I use it, it's got much better castability than monofilament line and literally no stretch. So even on a long cast, if a big fish hits, you can get a really good hook set. You'll also notice that the 20-pound braid has 6-pound test monofilament diameter. So it's very thin. That's why it casts well and also allows the lures to swim at the right depth. The only problem is that in clear water, it is visible to fish. So what I like to do is to use a fluorocarbon leader. So that's what I'm holding up here. This particular spool has 20-pound test fluorocarbon on it. And this is kind of nice because on the back, they show you the most popular knots that you can use when you're tying either the leaders and around like terminal tackle like snaps and swivels, or you're making a connection with your titanium braid. This is awesome, you know, just to use a spinning outfit and to shoreline fish. You know, on our website at Ask Italo, so many people ask me about shore fishing locations. And one of the places that I really encourage people to visit is the Niagara River at all different times of the year. If you come here in the fall and winter, there's excellent salmon and trout fishing. If you come in the summertime, it's excellent for smallmouth bass. Now, normally people don't fish this close to the falls. Most of the public fishing is down in an area called Whirlpool. Oh, this guy's taking me up and around the rocks here, where you have about 3 or 4 miles of water to fish, all the way down to a place called Pebbly Beach. But this is nice because as long as you've got good footwear and a jacket, backpack with your gear, it's actually pretty easy to get around. And I'm going to go back this way. See, there's very large rocks here, which have probably tumbled down when this gorge was created. So the fish, a lot of times, will try to go around those rocks. Not that they purposely try to, you know, break your line, but the rocks kind of get in their way. So I was able to get my net, and this is actually a nice spot to land fish. Haven't got a look at this fish yet. It looks like a small Chinook, which is kind of neat, you know, because when you're fishing here in November like I am, you can get a real mix of fish. Sometimes you can even get muskie and bass. And because I've been casting mostly a small spinner, you know, it looks like a bait fish, so you can virtually catch anything that's swimming around out there. So if I can get this guy a little bit close. It amazes me how loud the waterfalls are. It's like a big roar in the background. Now, you know, I make this look easy, but when I have people fishing with me and I get them to land the fish for me, it's not as easy as it looks. When you're trying to hold a fish with one hand, the rod, and the net with the other. I used to use for years a rubber net, which worked fine. The only problem with the rubber net is that they're heavy. This guy's got lots of energy. So I've gone to this, it's called a basket net. Spinner's out. I'm just going to hold him up if I can. As I was saying, this guy's considered a dark salmon, and a lot of people don't fish for them, but you know what? I think they're great sport, especially if you're casting, you know, lures from shore the way I am today. The reason I know he's a little male, he's got a big head and he's got a beak, and you can see how lean he is. If you look at his back, he's got a very narrow back, so they flatten out much like a lot of the other male Pacific salmon species. And all those dark models, he's almost like a brown color and black belly. When this guy was in the lake probably a month ago, he was brilliant silver and feeding on bait fish. Okay, see if I can just keep him there for a minute. There's my spinner. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just put him in the water and release him. I want him to get back to what he was doing, which is chasing stuff and spawning. So I'm guessing that fish is about 12 pounds. It's almost 3 feet long. Nice, healthy male Chinook. And he should just swim off in a minute and disappear into the mighty Niagara. Just going to get the spinner out. So this mesh, as I was saying earlier, isn't heavy like the rubber mesh. And even though I've got my lure in here, the nice thing about it is that the hooks can't go in the actual mesh. It's gone in the hole. So because that fish twisted, you know, this is where you need to take your time. You can see I got one of the hooks out, and the second one is exposed. And I'm going to just try to slowly work this one out. You know, when you're dealing with a treble hook, a lot of times the line from the mesh can go in between, just like that, in between where the hooks join, right in here. Okay, so this is the spinner that's done it. This one's a little bit bigger. It's a number 5, and it's got a silver blade, pink body. I think the pink is a really good color when you're river fishing for migratory fish, because it probably resembles maybe eggs that can be free drifting, and also from the fish that are in the ocean, you know, different types of shrimps and prawns that are that pink color. But a number 5 is a pretty big blade, and I normally wouldn't use it fishing smaller tributaries. But here in the Niagara River, because you've got a lot of water, you know, the river's probably, I'd say at least 800 yards wide. You know, the water in the middle is probably 100 to 200 feet deep. So we've got a lot of flow, and the fish are scattered. It's not like fishing a smaller tributary where the fish are close by. So you got to really make lots of casts to try and locate the fish. Now, as far as gear, I got to tell you that the rods that I'm using are actually made for casting lures, yet they're still called steelhead and salmon rods. I'm just going to put the net down. I'm going to show you the main difference here. This particular rod, let me just reel in the line, is part of the RSC series. I'm going to hold 2 of them up here, okay? And you can see that they're rated for 8 to 12 pound test. This particular one is 9 feet long, so it says right on the blank, 9 feet long. The one that I have in my left hand is rated for 10 to 25 pound test. It's a little stiffer, and it's only 8 feet long, but they're both RSC series. And on them, I've got loaded 2 spinning reels, and these are, one is a medium size, one is a larger size spinning reel, and I'm using a braided line. That's why that line looks green. And the reason I'm doing that, a few days ago I was hooking Chinooks up to 30 pounds here, and if you didn't get the hooks into them, they'd run about 20-30 yards, and then they'd throw the hook, even the treble. So if I put these 2 rods together, and if you go up the actual guides, you'll notice that the rod on the right, the guides become very small right to the tip. The rod on the left, the guides remain quite large. So this rod that I'm shaking right here is the rod that's really designed to cast heavier lures. This one you could use for drift fishing and also for casting lighter lures. And that's the one that I just got that last fish on. So you could use a 7-foot spinning rod, like medium action or medium heavy. But if you hook like a 30-pound salmon, chances are you're not going to get the hooks into it. And if you do get it on, you might snap the rod.
Fisher girl! Gotta have pink!
Now, if you're going to fish for fish that live on the bottom, for example, today, we're very close to St. Catharines. This is called Charles Daly Park, and there's some nice marshes here. And we already saw one gentleman that supposedly caught a 30-pound carp. That's a pretty big carp. It's almost 3 feet long. And he's probably fishing on the bottom because these carp swim along the bottom, and if they find something tasty, like some carbohydrates, like some corn on a hook, or some roots from some plants, they eat them. So just like we enjoy eating vegetables and other carbs, pasta and so on, they like it too, okay? So to fish on bottom, one of the best rigs to use is actually called a sliding sinker rig. And the reason it's called a sliding sinker rig is pretty obvious. I've got a bell sinker, actually it's an egg sinker. You could use a bell sinker without the center, and you put the line through it so it slides up and down. You'll notice that I used a little bead. You could even put a pink bead there if you wanted to. The bead is there so when the sinker hits the swivel, boom, it doesn't wreck the line. It's like a cushion. Then I have a swivel that's right there, and to the swivel I have my leader with my hook. Believe it or not, I actually used this rig to do a carp show in Hamilton Harbor, the Jardin Canal. So what happens, you cast this out, it hits the bottom. Okay, so this is, my hand is now the bottom. This is laying on the bottom, and you have bait on here. When a fish grabs the bait and starts eating it and swims away, look what happens at the sinker. He pulls the line through the sinker. So no matter how big the sinker is, he doesn't feel it. but you see on your rod tip that there's a fish biting your line. That's why it's called a sliding sinker rig. A lot of times, even fish like carp, if they feel the weight of a sinker, they let it go. They know something's up. It's not right. So a sliding sinker rig, whether you're using a little sinker like this, if you're fishing for smaller fish close to shore, or a great big sinker that would weigh several ounces where you want to cast out really far, when it hit the bottom, it wouldn't matter, because when the fish bites on it, the line goes through the sinker. They don't feel it. Very good rig. Sliding sinker rig.